Hello parents! I just wanted to do this short video as a follow-up to another video I just did for parents who may have children who are experimenting with drugs, alcohol, vaping, things like that. I hope you'll watch that video. I think I'm going to title it something, is your child, using drugs or alcohol? Something like that. And so look at that one. It'll be a little bit longer than this one. It'll cover many different facets. One of the things I talked about in that video that I thought was worth mentioning is this little tidbit, which is I always say to parents, do not condone indulgent behavior. Do not condone an indulgence. Well, what is an indulgence? An indulgence is a free will choice to participate in any thought, process, or thing that creates adverse consequences. So here's some kind of examples of what I'm talking about, of when parents condone indulgent or self-destructive or poor behavior. A parent might say to me, many times have I ran into parents who have a teenage daughter who has got a boyfriend now, and they don't really know what to do with it. All they know is that this relationship is going farther than what they feel comfortable with. And so they start allowing him to spend time at the house. And it starts off kind of like this, where the daughter will invite the boy over. They will try to get private time, like in another room or in a family room or whatever, and then eventually, the parent is uncomfortable with that, but they allow it. So this is what condoning indulgent behavior. And then all of a sudden, maybe the daughter says, "Oh, is it okay if me and Billy just go and into my bedroom, for a little bit and sit on my bed and watch some videos or, go on social media or whatever?" And the parent reluctantly will say, "Yeah, okay." And pretty soon, little Billy and little Julie, if you will, are now sexually active or starting to have sex. Mom and dad know about it, but they continue to allow it. And when I ask them about why they allow this activity, they say, "Oh, well, I'm so concerned for her that I'd rather, if she were going to have sex, to have it here in the house." Or, "I'd rather her be in the safety of our own home, because Lord knows what she would be doing, if she were doing this at his place." And there'll be other excuses like, "Oh, well, because where he lives, his parents are hardly around. They work all day," or et cetera. Or maybe they're at a party. I mean, how are we going to keep track of that? And so these are the parents who, out of their own anxiety and their own fears, what I call their own tragic thinking, convince themselves that it's okay then for them to allow their daughter to engage in indulgent behavior under their very roof. Under their very roof. Same thing with substance abuse. Parents might say, "Well, I know my son's going to drink, him and his buddies." Well, how old are they? I might say, "Well, they're 15, 16, 17. I say, "Well, okay, they're going to drink, so, well, I don't want them to go out. There's so much craziness on the streets these days, or you go to a house party and, police show up or what have you, and I don't want something bad showing up on his record, because then he can't get into college or go to school or what have you. And so I'd rather just have him drink here. If they're going to drink, everybody's going to hand me their car keys. Nobody's going to go home until the next morning." Yeah, so parents kind of line up their ducks, and they rationalize it with their own heads that, it's just safer for my son or daughter to be indulging. In other words, to engage in freedoms that they're not supposed to have until they get older, until they can demonstrate more responsibility. So the parent makes exceptions for their son or daughter to get around those boundaries of either the law or what is morally right and true. Same thing with use of other drugs, marijuana. Same thing. Well, I'd rather have my son, if he's going to smoke, or daughter, if she's going to smoke, better that she do it here with her friends in the backyard or what have you. And that way, at least I know where she is. I'm sure you've heard this kind of rationale constantly. But all this does is it teaches a template. It teaches a template of how to use rationalization in order to make ourselves exempt from what is right and true, to make us exempt from the law, to make us exempt from what morality, dictates, if you will, the principles of morality, or how to conduct ourselves morally. Because basically it says to a child, I know I shouldn't do it, but if I can rationalize this, if I can build up enough excuses, then it's okay. And then, of course, parents get mad at that, So now little Susie or whatever, little Julie wants to, have unprotected sex, or maybe little Julie wants to stay out at parties a little bit later. Oh, well, I couldn't come home, because so-and-so had been drinking. Or I couldn't come home, because I didn't have a ride, or I couldn't come home. And so now that rationalizes even further indulgence. Parents will then say, well, why didn't you give us a call? And so now they're wondering how this went sideways. And when I go back, I've said, yeah, but you've taught her how to make herself exempt from the law. You've taught him how if you can just find the right excuses, then it's okay. Then the law doesn't apply to you. So never condone an indulgence. Now, does that mean you never, that you keep your head in the sand and you pretend that it doesn't exist or what have you? No. Sometimes it's a matter of, I think, oftentimes it's a matter of natural consequences. Because one of the things that you can't do, parents, here, without potentially aggravating the situation and becoming your own worst enemy, is that you can't lecture, you can't give advice. Those days are over with. That's what you did when your kids were small. Now, you want your son and daughter mostly to focus on becoming their own man, their own woman, so they can become self-directed, etc. And that's called individuation. And the way you do that is by facilitating conversations in which you remind them of the best of who they are, and then allow them to reflect on their behavior to see if their behavior is a true reflection of who they are. If there isn't, there are consequences. Now, that's one way to do it. And as I mentioned, also natural consequences. So, maybe your son or daughter goes out and they engage in alcohol and drug use, and maybe they get arrested that night. Most of the time police don't, push for charges or anything like that, these days especially, but, it's still a natural consequence. Now you can work with that when the child comes home and says, oh, well, or the police drop them off. And then you can say, oh, well, what happened here? I know that you're a caring, respectful, mature individual, and now you're brought home by the police. Tell me more about this. What's going on? What do you think? So the child has an opportunity to reflect on their best self and then reflect on their behavior. So I said a lot more about this in the previous video. I wanted to keep this one short and just really say to you, parents, do not condone indulgent behavior. Do not condone it. Do not provide rationalization for it. Otherwise, it will come back to haunt you. It will come back to kind of bite you in the butt. Okay, so take care, and I'll keep posting videos for you. Bye.